Ceci est un livre audio autogénéré par Google. Quête du sens. Collection dirigée par Georges Elias Sarfati. Quête du sens participe d'une réévaluation de l'éthique et de l'accomplissement des fins humaines, considérant que l'émancipation des sujets est indissociable des luttes pour l'émancipation collective. Fondée en référence à la pensée de Viktor Frankl, philosophe et pionnier de la thérapie existentielle, cette collection accueille des textes narratifs, des essais critiques, des entretiens, des collectifs dont les auteurs sont soucieux de témoigner de la recherche du sensé et de l'affirmation persistante de l'action et de la liberté humaine dans une histoire en proie au conflit des significations. Ces perspectives questionnent la condition humaine, compte tenu de ses dimensions tragiques, souffrance, culpabilité, finitude, dans les trois registres de la création, de l'expérience et de l'attitude. Ces contributions, de la clinique à la politique, ouvrent sur la possibilité d'un remaniement discret des idées reçues, comprises comme des héritages actifs du conformisme et des totalitarismes, privilégiant ainsi l'expression de l'expérience immédiate et concrète d'une pensée de rupture avec l'ère du temps. Dernière parution. Léo Michel Abrami, La recherche du sens en analyse existentielle et logothérapie 2015. Mohamed Yahya Ould Siré, La Mauritanie, entre l'esclavage et le racisme, 2014. Sarah Ben Saïd, Bénéfices secondaires, 2013. PREFACE. Everyone shall be entitled to a fair and public hearing by a competent, independent and impartial tribunal established by law. Article 14 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR. The right to a fair hearing, the right to due process of law is the cornerstone of democracy. It is the basic pillar of a modern state respecting, protecting and promoting human rights. What many have the tendency to forget is that this particular right, consecrated by international human rights law, has a major purpose: to protect the liberty and the security of the person, under any circumstances. Indeed, it is the right to due process of law that guarantee people their right to live freely, to exercise other liberties and rights freely, not to be afraid of human rights violations such as arbitrary detention, police violence, such as confession under torture, and many other types of violations that we have observed across the world. The fundamental importance of this particular right was recognized under international human rights instrument adopted not only at the global level of the United Nations but also in many regional human rights treaties like the European Convention for the Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms, Article 6, adopted in the framework of the Council of Europe or the American Convention on Human Rights, Article 8, adopted by the Organization of American States. At the international level, the major role of this particular right to a fair trial or due process of law was highlighted by its inclusion as a non-derogable right provided for in Article 4.2 of the ICCPR. That means that this special category of rights is considered so crucial that they cannot be taken away or compromised under any circumstances, not even when a state is at war or facing internal conflict or social unrest. The right to a fair trial can be violated in many ways, but as a general principle it must always be kept in mind that the accused person must at all times be given a genuine opportunity to answer the charge, challenge evidence and cross-examine witnesses, and to do so in a dignified atmosphere. Needless to say, that all information gathered during my own independent investigation on this landmark case, which became a media experiment and a barometer of social attitude, showed clearly that, in spite of the grave accusation and extremely serious character of the case, the Israeli judicial system did not guarantee the right to due process of law in a dignified way. Media and judges behaved as if the accused was already guilty of all the charge. Taking into account that the major charge was slavery, one of the worst human rights violations and a major criminal offense, one would expect of the Israeli police and judicial system to deal with such cases with the utmost professionalism. This was clearly not the case, approved during the trial several times and stated even in the judgment, from the very first paragraphs. Except if one considers that the loss of investigation videos, threatening the accused and witnesses, promising gift or exercising physical and verbal violence are part of normal professional police conduct in a modern state. Interrogation taking place in hotel rooms and coercing or torturing persons under investigation is what we call miscarriage of justice. The guideline of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, OHCHR, clearly underline. Failure and shortcoming at the stage of the criminal investigation may seriously jeopardize the right to fair trial proceedings and terribly also prejudice the right to be presumed innocent. In the mini ratio reasoning, part of the judgment of Daniel Ambash, the 3 judges of the Jerusalem District Court state clearly that some of the investigations were not documented, but they are negligible, especially at the beginning of the investigation, often due to error and sometimes due to a lack of care and attention. Though there were some investigation failure or violence, they are not significant and cannot cause us to discard the nature of the investigation and its results. This is quite a surprising appreciation, to say the least a regard legal analysis, when a court of justice, composed of 3 judges, pass so rapidly from clearly demarcated red lines regarding police misconduct in such an important case, well-documented misconduct and relevant violation, so shocking that in any other legal system of a modern so-called democratic state, there would have been an institutional response, to admit the police failure not only at the stage of investigation but also with respect to all the other part of the legal proceedings. A human rights activist and lawyer, I was extremely surprised, even before coming to Israel and meeting different actors involved in this case that a court simply dismissed, in one phrase, violations that would have invalidated the process in any other country, or at least any other democratic country with independent and impartial institutions. It is the role of the judges to remind the prosecutor of the guideline on the role of prosecutors. In particular, guideline says, when prosecutors come into possession of evidence against suspects that they know or believe on reasonable grounds or obtained through recourse to unlawful methods, which constitute a grave violation of the suspect's human rights, especially involving torture or cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment, or other abuse of human rights, they shall refuse to use such evidence against anyone other than those who used such methods, or inform the court accordingly, and shall take all necessary steps to ensure that the responsible for using such methods are brought to justice. Is it possible that the prosecutor was not aware of the multiple and repeated violation and shameless behavior of police agents throughout this process? Even if that was so, should they not have changed this attitude when the defense lawyers of Daniel Ambash brought those shocking elements before the court? I shall refer to another fundamental principle, the prohibition on the use of evidence obtained through unlawful means, in other words, the right of an accused not to be compelled to testify against himself or herself remains valid throughout the trial proceedings. It means that there must be an absence of both direct and indirect physical or psychological pressure from the investigating authorities for the purposes of obtaining a confession. An accused who has confessed guilt after such undue pressure must bring the matter before the competent authorities, including the judges in the trial court, failing which he or she runs the risk of not having this undue compulsion considered in connection with the determination of the criminal charge. That is exactly what happened in the case of Daniel Ambash. It is not a simple assumption, it is a matter of fact, of truth, of evidence, simply ignored by the judges and the prosecutor whose role in all this remains a big mystery. The police behavior from the beginning and even several months after the sentencing of the accused is not only problematic but illegal. Their act, in the framework of a legal process, amount to torture. Allow me to remind you of some basic rules of international law regarding torture, especially in the framework of a legal process. Article 7 of the ICCPR prohibits torture or cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment and is a norm of customary international law that also belongs to the category of jus cogens. In practical terms, that means that this rule is applicable to all states, regardless if they have signed and/or ratified the international instrument on torture. This is a universal principle of law applied in all circumstances. The numerous testimony regarding physical violence, threats, verbal abuse, mental intimidation. The list goes on and on. The unprofessional and illegal methods that police agents, in other words state agents, used against several members of the Ambash family should shock the judges and journalists and Israeli society as a whole. It should not be treated like a minor detail of the case, it should be regarded as proof that state agent breached the law. A personally contacted MAH, Israel's police investigation unit to ask where the internal investigation stand following complaint of many members of the Ambash family. I saw with my own eyes the video of the adolescent girls, Aya 6 years old, with trace of police violence on her face and body. Until today, this process has not moved forward, leaving serious doubt whether the police of the police does indeed take seriously into account civil complaint. It is even more shocking that the same women, the Ambash partners, who are considered by the judicial system of Israel as victims of slavery, sexual exploitation, violence, etc., are also victims of institutional violence from several fronts: police, justice, social workers, etc. What kind of system judicial, legal and institutional would treat victims of slavery in this manner? What kind of society or enlightened individual would not ask any question regarding the handling of this case? How is it that the prosecution had such a limited access to the media, when the Ambash companion did not have any? How can a modern, civilized and open society, as the Israeli society aspires to be, exercise its lawful right to information, criticism, institutional control, when there is such a biased interpretation of the law supposed to protect the victims, when the victims themselves do not have the right to express themselves? That is a perverted interpretation of the law, and the reality is that today, many of the members of the so-called sect are in such a bad situation, as seen with my own eyes, that one should ask himself or herself: has something gone wrong here, or has justice played its role to protect society from a danger? When I say danger, I am not referring to the defendant. By referring to their situation, I am definitely not implying that the responsibility lies upon Daniel Ambash. The responsibility lies primarily on the system which treats those women in an unspeakable manner and marginalizes them increasingly throughout the years. Personally, I was totally surprised that the judges decided whether and how those 4 women were under the mental control of Daniel Ambash without a proper psychological or psychiatric expert assessment, without inviting reputable psychiatrists to examine them and to submit report in proper and due form. I consider that after all those years, it is quite obvious that the intense and non-stop struggle of the 4 women to support the plea of their companion is the best proof that obviously the judges are not psychiatrists and obviously the monster cannot exercise his control over the women while in prison. These are quite vivid questions. I am quite dismayed by the attitude of the legal system towards the Ambash family. Ignorance? Bad faith? Marginalization? Punishment? Limiting the scope of an open society? I will not enter into the detail of the case, currently pending before the Appeal Court of Jerusalem. I will not express in public my doubt regarding the guilt or innocence of Daniel Ambash. I will not criticize the judgment of the District Court as I was not present during the trial. However, what I can definitely state is that there are so many doubts over this case, there are so many lives broken, so many children abused by the social workers, women being harassed by police officers, that the state agent and representative exercise such power without any control, that it is obvious that misconduct by state actors and miscarriage of justice exist. In the end, the members of the Ambash family were not protected by the law. The Akiva case demonstrates that in the most vivid manner, and his story could well be that of a horror movie. His shocking letter should be a wake-up call to the entire political, social and judicial system of the State of Israel. His testimony, the allegations included in his letter, are of paramount importance not only for the right to due process of law but for the most fundamental right to liberty and security of a person, of a fellow human being. When I met him at his grandmother's house, the amazing artist Nina Mayo, the mother of Daniel, who was living just across the ancient walls of the historic Jerusalem, in the neighborhood of the artist, as it is called, I was wondering while listening carefully to their stories whether there is an institutional policy of impunity in Israel or if one day the persons responsible for the tragedy that this child lived and experienced during his adolescence will be brought to justice. After reading the letter of Israel, we should exercise at least a minimum level of intellectual honesty and admit that the system did to this child exactly what the state accused his father of doing. Torturing him in every possible way. The forced isolation into a psychiatric institution in combination with forced medical psychiatric treatment remind us of the criminal methods used by other types of authoritarian regime. The way this child was treated is a dark page in a modern history of Israeli justice. It is a total shame. It is now up to the appeal court, part of the Supreme Court, to examine all these problematic elements and to show Israeli society that justice is above all, even security consideration, social stereotype or state power. Justice is a cornerstone of democracy and democracy does not allow even one tiny doubt, not a single misbehavior from state agent or representative, regarding the way its citizens are treated. As a Nobel Peace Prize laureate from South Africa, the Archbishop Desmond Tutu once said, "If you are neutral in situation of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor." Emmanuel Atanasio. Note of the editor. Internationally recognized human rights activist and lawyer, Emmanuel Atanasio has served in several intergovernmental organizations, United Nations, UNOSCE, as well as non-governmental organizations, MEF, FID, ECPM, FEMED. He was a founding member and coordinator of the international campaign for the 2010 Nobel Peace Prize laureate Liu Xiaobo. He is considered to be one of the most outspoken human rights advocates. Préface. Toute personne a droit à ce que sa cause soit entendue équitablement et publiquement par un tribunal compétent, indépendant et impartial, établi par la loi. Article 14 du Pacte international. Relatif aux droits civils et politiques. Le droit à une audition équitable, le droit à un procès équitable est une des pierres d'angle de la démocratie. Il constitue le pilier fondamental d'un État moderne qui respecte, protège et promeut les droits de l'homme. Ce que beaucoup ont tendance à oublier, c'est que ce droit particulier, consacré par le droit international, vise un objectif majeur: protéger la liberté et la sécurité de la personne en toutes circonstances. En effet, c'est le droit à un procès équitable qui garantit aux citoyens leur droit de vivre librement, d'exercer leurs autres libertés et leurs autres droits librement, de créer, de progresser, de vivre en sécurité, de ne pas avoir à craindre les violations des droits telles que la détention arbitraire, la violence policière telle que l'aveu obtenu sous la torture et plusieurs autres violations que nous avons constatées dans le monde. L'importance fondamentale de ce droit particulier a été reconnue par le droit international des droits de l'homme, élaboré non seulement au niveau global dans le cadre des Nations Unies, mais aussi dans plusieurs traités régionaux des droits de l'homme, tels que la Convention européenne pour la sauvegarde des droits de l'homme et les libertés fondamentales, article 6, adoptée dans le cadre du Conseil de l'Europe, ou la Convention américaine des droits de l'homme, article 8, adoptée par l'Organisation des États d'Amérique. Au niveau international, le rôle majeur de ce droit particulier à un procès équitable, ou à une instruction judiciaire équitable, a été reconnu par son inclusion comme un droit non dérogable par l'article 42.2 de l'ICCPR. Cela signifie que cette catégorie spéciale de droits est considérée comme tellement cruciale qu'ils ne peuvent être ni supprimés ni restreints quelles que soient les circonstances, pas même lorsqu'un État est en guerre ou qu'il fait face à un conflit international ou une crise sociale majeure. Le droit à un procès équitable peut être violé de différentes manières, mais en tant que principe général nous devons toujours garder à l'esprit que l'accusé doit, à tout moment, avoir la possibilité de répondre aux accusations, d'examiner ou mettre en doute une preuve ou un témoin, et de le faire dans une atmosphère qui respecte sa dignité. Il est inutile de dire que toute information recueillie au cours de mon enquête indépendante sur ce dossier choquant, qui est devenu un révélateur médiatique ainsi qu'un baromètre de l'attitude sociale, a clairement montré qu'en dépit des graves accusations et du caractère très sérieux du dossier, la justice israélienne n'a garanti à aucun des accusés le droit.
Nous espérons que vous avez apprécié cet aperçu. Pour continuer à écouter ce livre audio sur Google Play Livres, utilisez le lien dans la description de la vidéo.